Welcome to another episode of Patriots No Huddle, brought to you by PatsFans.com. Derek Havens, Steve Balistrieri, Mike Diabate. Here's your host, as always. Please do subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Like, share, leave us a review. It really does help us keep us in those rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. And I want to give a shout out to people who are either listening live or who have downloaded the last couple episodes. If you want to comment in, feel free. We are always down for a little Patriots potpourri question. And I'm certainly always the one who likes to play spin the bottle with these two boys in terms of topics because I keep them on their toes. Someone has to. But
I
before
don't
we
know
do
about that spin the bottle stuff, though. I don't.
Oh, yeah, okay, maybe I could have used a little bit different verbiage, but you know what I mean. Don't make
Not
it
that there's
weird.
anything wrong with that.
No, don't make it weird, Steve. All right, all right. Don't make me fly out to Florida to reprimand you. All right. Um, I want to go ahead and
Please
first,
come.
but I know, but well, then we're having two cubes next to in the lanai, and that's just a whole other shit show. Robin and Catherine don't need more ammo against us than they already have. But I will say that if you're watching on YouTube, I am against my headrest. The reason is if anyone listening has an infant, you know how important and how critical sleeping during the day is. And my baby's currently asleep in the nursery. And my wife pretty much put her foot down and said, "You can't do your podcast where you normally do it." So I moved to the bedroom. So this is where we're at. So hopefully my audio is coming in clear. And that was pretty much that was a one-sided debate, and I lost. So here we are. Anyways, before
That's
we
a
start the
fight.
show,
That's a
yeah,
fight you don't want to start.
no, I'd rather sleep in my bed tonight, not on the couch. Yeah, of course. So, Steve, before we start the show, buddy, how you doing today?
Doing great. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. You know, the pads are on back at Gillette, and players are looking good. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
positives coming out of camp. Um, Even like nationally, Peter Schrager and uh, he was on.
Kyle Brandt, I think you're thinking of
Huh?
probably. Was it Kyle Brandt who was
No, Peter Schrager was on the podcast with what's his name, the former punter from the Colts. Now I'm drawing a
Oh,
blank.
Pat McAfee. Yeah.
Yeah, he was on Pat McAfee's show.
Well, I
This
know Schrager switched networks, but I thought because him and Kyle Brandt from NFL Network used to do a lot of stuff, so that's where I was going with that. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but he
yeah.
he even had a lot of positives to say,
Oh, the
and
vibes, the vibes are immaculate right now with the Patriots. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I did say I did do a couple, Hail Marys because of the Gonzalez injury, which I'll talk to Mike about in a second, but we'll get to that. But um, Mike, you've been boots on the ground. Are you hydrated? Have you been able to eat? You got through traffic okay? What's the deal here?
Hydrated for the most part. Anyone knows me knows that that is not an easy task when the weather is like this for someone
No.
like me. So it really is. It's a labor of love, but one that I embrace with every fiber of my being. No, all kidding aside, it's been a great atmosphere in Gillette. It was hot today. Some people making more comments about the heat than normal, and getting a chance to, interact and, sitting with the fans and looking at some of the reactions throughout the day. When you saw Jalen Polk come out, full pads, everybody was happy to see him.
Mm,
Surprisingly, not a lot of vitriol, at least from what I heard, being thrown in his direction. Not sure what the pulse was like on social media, but people seemed genuinely happy to see Jalen, back in the fold. And then the air got taken out of the sails a little bit. 2 plays into 11 and 11 drills. Looked like it happened on a crossing route. Christian was going up. He was attempting to defend Stephon Diggs. And when he came back down, he grabbed his left leg and started to favor it. Very shortly thereafter, goes off the field, went to the medical shed, which is adjacent to where the practice fields are. came out and left the field, and we essentially did not see him return from that point. Now, there are all different reasons why things like this can happen. I mentioned the heat right off the bat, folks, because it's important to remember that heat can cause sometimes hamstrings, it can
A lot of
cause
cramps.
strains, it can cause cramps, it can cause some issues that do happen with legs. So there's no need to necessarily put out the the Red Cross feelers just yet. There's not a need to panic unless there's something to panic about. Now, that being said, he did leave. He left under his own volition. He was walking under his own power without any type of assistance. So that's always good. But he was walking very gingerly. I think that's also something that should be said. And at the end of the day, until we know more, there really isn't a whole lot of point in speculating. Things are being kept, at least in my circles, very tight-lipped for Christian's health right now. So you just hope for the best. You hope that this is not going to be anything serious or anything that's going to keep him from the field, because the way the Patriots are playing right now, especially on defense, he is the one guy that you do not want to be missing. There are very few of those right up at the top of that list of guys that you do not want to see go down to injury. Drake May obviously up there, Christian Barmore obviously up there as well, considering what he went through last year. But Gonzalez may be at the top of the list for the defense. So you just hope for the best, and hopefully he'll be able to weather through this.
So, Mike, as you were talking, I started my Amazon cart order, and I have 6 feet of rope and a step ladder. Are you saying I should cancel that, or
I
are you
probably would. I don't think
okay?
there's going to be a
Okay,
need for that. No,
just making sure.
that should be, you should be all set.
We'll
But
see.
no, but no. All kidding aside, folks. I mean, this is a team for the last 25 years that it's predicated itself on next man up mentality. And, as much as we love to give Bill Belichick credit and stuff like that for, things like this, that's a mentality that I think is ingrained here no matter who is the head coach. And Mike Vrabel is certainly a guy that is capable of getting the most out of his players. So we saw Alex Austin step up today in Christian's absence. We saw Marcellus Dial get more looks. The Patriots may be smart to take their time with Christian, make sure he's fully
Absolutely.
healthy before you put him back out there. So you don't see him pop back out first couple of days of practice. I wouldn't necessarily, be scared or anything like that, but just keep a sharp ear and a sharp eye to social media. And as soon as we know anything, you'll all know what happened to Christian today. And by the time you're listening to this podcast, it may already be public knowledge. But as we sit here right now at 3:30 p.m. on Monday, July 28th, we're still optimistic and hoping for the best. And hopefully it was just a bad day and Christian's able to pop back like it was nothing.
Well, Mike, I'm going to circle back to some of your observations here in a minute. I want to get Steve's thoughts on what you just talked about. I do want to thank everyone who's listening live, because we do have some live listeners, and I do appreciate it. And again, we've gotten a lot of attention lately. And if you're listening live, feel free on Twitter if you want to shoot a comment, or or on YouTube if you want to shoot a comment or whatever a discussion topic. I'm more than happy to jump into it. Steve, with Christian Gonzalez, something that Mike just said a couple minutes ago, he's one of the few players that honestly would be, maybe catastrophic is a little strong, but certainly painful for the team to lose. Right?
Oh, it would be painful.
It's a marquee position, and he's one of the best, probably 2 or 3 players on the team. So, what are your thoughts on that? To me, I'm thankful, because when I heard the news, and Mike, you can attest to this, and I saw some videos, and I know a lot of our listeners probably saw some videos going up, kind of around of what happened. He was pulling at that hamstring a little bit, and it scares me because I know those things linger. It could be due to the heat, and could be due to whatever, but when you're playing defensive back, Steve, you're backpedaling. You have to be reactive, not active, like in terms of like the offense. You know what I mean? So it scares me that it's gonna be something that kind of goes through. But to me, wrap them in bubble wrap, and try to get a couple more reps before the season. But I'm hoping it's something sincere. What are your thoughts on the Christian Gonzalez situation today?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if it was serious, they would have taken him off in a cart.
Of course.
So that leads me to believe that it isn't a serious thing. More than likely, it was just a muscle cramp, and that can happen on a day like today. Like Mike said,
Mm-hmm.
he was leaping with Stephon Diggs to try to knock down a pass. And sometimes you can get one of those muscle cramps in the back of a hamstring, and those are painful.
Well,
I
you
mean,
and I have turned medium rare now on training camp days in the past, so I get it. And
yes.
Mike looks like he sears like an ahi tuna. I mean, he looks like he looks like he can slice a piece of focaccia, but I'm not sure how well he'll deal with SPF 30. So I don't know.
A little olive oil, he's good to go.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Just
But no,
just a little
you know,
just a little nana's oil. There we're good.
but back to Gonzalez, I really don't think it's a serious thing. I mean, we won't know. I'm sure they're just going to say he's day to day with a lower body injury, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that's what I would expect to hear. And yeah, I think you're absolutely correct in the manner that, hey, there's no rush to bring him back. They know what he brings to the table,
Of course.
So it's a good time. It's never a good time to have arguably your best player injured on defense, but at the same time, it's a good time to get the kids involved, right? Let them go against the ones. Now, the guys who might not necessarily get runs
Well,
against guys like Stephon Diggs and Pop Douglas, let them get a lot of experience that way, and it'll be a good thing in the long run.
Well, let's see Alex Austin get some reps. Let's see Dial get some reps, as Mike brought up. Like I feel like that's all totally fair, and obviously we want the best for Gonzalez, but like you said, there's nothing he has to prove at this point. I mean, he's
Yeah.
going into year 3. He was a second team All Pro, and I don't know where you would rank him, but he's probably one of the, I don't know, put him in the conversation of the top 8 cornerbacks of like without having to rank him or anything, like put him in the top 8 cornerbacks in the entire league. So it's like I don't need to see him in training camp if he needs time to rehab or whatever. Let's just let the young boys eat, as they say. So Mike, switching back over to change the topic a little bit. Um, I forget, were you there on Saturday or no?
I was not. I was not on there. I
Okay,
was not
but
there on
well, there
Saturday.
was a clip going viral, and obviously I wasn't there, uh, but Drake May kind of rolled to his right, and did something off script, threw off one foot, threw it like a 55-yard beam to Pop Douglas over coverage, and Vrabel spoke really highly of Pop Douglas today, and I'm excited about his development because I feel like this is the kind of offense that Josh McDaniels brings to the table that really will emphasize his skill set. And I do think it'll be fun for him and fun for fans to watch, because I think he can excel in it. What are your thoughts on Pop Douglas and anything that you've seen regarding to him? If not, I mean, if you haven't seen anything, no big deal. But what are your thoughts on basically what he brings to the table to this offense?
Oh no, there's definitely a lot to see with Pop. I think he's been their most consistent and probably their most explosive receiver to date. Now, there have been times where Drake is connected with some of the receivers out there, Kyle Williams, Stephon
Hmm.
Diggs. He had a pretty exciting connection on Saturday with Javon Baker. I mentioned today that he had a nice under route over to Jalen Polk. Those are all positives and those are all steps in the right direction. But the thing that I loved about his synergy with Demario Douglas is that it's building off of a relationship that we started to see budding and building last year. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, Derek. This is a tailor-made offense for Demario's strengths, and it's only going to accentuate those. Spoke to the media after practice. He's extremely, happy to be back. And it's to be back, I shouldn't say back, but to be in a Josh McDaniels offense because this is where he feels most comfortable. He's really developing a good relationship, an on-field relationship with Drake May, and he's getting a chance to showcase that he is an explosive playmaker. For the last couple of seasons, we've been talking about the Patriots being devoid of playmakers. We always kind of had that caveat, though. Steve, I know we've talked about this several times offline and, my previous podcast about Demario Douglas being a playmaker that kind of laid within the weeds, so to speak, and he didn't really get a chance to showcase what he can truly do. He's getting that opportunity now. He looks engaged. He's hitting his routes very quickly. He's running his routes extremely effectively, and he's showing off some sure hands and some real ability in that burst after the catch. So with everything that you've seen, it's no wonder Mike Vrabel has officially named him as one of the off-season players of the year so far. Pop's been at the top of everyone's list, and I think he's not only turning the heads of his teammates, but most importantly, his coaches, who seem very comfortable to give him a lot of responsibility this year.
And Steve, I mean, we know as well. I mean, and Mike as well, of course. We have seen how Josh McDaniels' offense is sometimes the short passing game is an extension of the running game, and sometimes those short passing routes, even if they're little drag routes or whatever, and it's a 5-yard completion. Well, sometimes that's a positive thing because you're advancing the offense forward, and that's where I see Pop really going ahead and excelling. Now, I'm not saying that every completion is going to be 5 yards, but you know what I mean. Like it's progressing forward, and it's positive yards are never negatives, of course. So what are your thoughts on his involvement in the Josh McDaniels offense to this point?
Yeah, well, as we've seen, I mean, McDaniels has always done this. We saw it with Wes Welker, we saw it with uh, Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, whoever they put in that slot, was always productive because McDaniels can scheme it up that way. And um, Douglas has never had the true opportunity to show what he had, what he can do. Um, in the past couple of years, they've faced these loaded boxes, which kind of takes away that underneath stuff. But now they have some players that are able to stretch the field a little bit vertically and horizontally. And with McDaniels back in the fold, he's going to be able to scheme some things up. I think Douglas, I think your tight ends and your running backs, and we'll get to that in just a moment, I'm sure. But your running backs, they're all going to see much better production this year. And the fact that Douglas is prepared to go, I think he was probably the most excited about any of the returning players, because of Josh McDaniels coming back. I mean, this guy is having a really good camp up to this point, and let's hope he can continue to build on that, because I think he's going to be one of the guys that drives the offense moving forward.
Well, the NFL has gone to such a place where it's kind of like an NBA term, but it's pace and space, right? So it's all about how you can separate on the field, because the field dimensions are what the field dimensions are. So it's like, how can you make the defense most vulnerable? And if you have Stephon Diggs, who was cleared before training camp, who's on the X position, and he can maybe take things more vertically, and you have Pop Douglas, who can be an extension of the running game, and you have two good veteran tight ends who can do that, and you have Kyle Williams, who can add some explosiveness, and then it gives more room for your running backs to go ahead and really put the defense in a position where they have to make a decision, because that's really what you want to do, right? You want to put the defense in a position to make a choice. Like, they have to make a choice of pick your poison, essentially, for lack of a better phrase. And so, Mike, going to you, if you do have a healthy Stephon Diggs and Pop can excel the way we all think he can excel in this offense, and then we know how Josh likes to utilize running backs and what their skill set can bring, it does make it harder on defensive coordinators. Maybe they're staying up a little bit late at night on Saturdays before a Sunday game, getting ready for preparing for this offense.
Oh, without question. Hello, Chris, by the way. Thank you
Chris,
for the
what's up,
welcome.
buddy?
We appreciate that. All kidding aside, no, I think that right now you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the maybe the difficulty, or at least the dilemma that it leaves a lot of defensive coordinators, because it does give you pause as to whether or not you can defend the Patriots in the same fashion that you have for the last couple of years. I think most defensive coordinators in this league are going to be savvy enough to realize that's no longer the case. There's simply too much talent there to ignore it, maybe where you could in years past. But where are you going to pick your poison? Where are you going to focus your efforts? Because the Patriots can make you pay. If you're going to try to load up and stop the run, that gives the Patriots the opportunity to spread the field a little bit. And now they have guys that can do it. The question is hitting the right buttons for this coaching staff and making sure that the guys they put in place are going to be players that can complement each other with various skill sets. And I think that's an embarrassment of riches that the Patriots haven't had in quite a while. And I'm not saying that they're bursting at the seams with it, folks. Nobody's talking about, all pro seasons for multiple guys on this roster. But at the same time, there are players that can play. You got a two-time former all pro on this roster that if he's healthy, and by all indications he looks like he is, he can still be a guy that people game plan for or game plan against, really, I think is the best way to put it, in Stephon Diggs. Baker is someone that could end up making some noise. I know there was some erroneous information that was passed around throughout social media about him over the weekend. That was quickly debunked by Stephon Diggs himself, saying this kid is giving it everything he's got. And there were no signs out there that there was anything out of the ordinary when it came to Javon. So I have no idea where that came from, but that's a conversation for another day. He's making his push. Kayshon Boutte had a tremendous day today out there on the field on Monday, making grabs, caught both of his targets, one of which, would have been a would-be touchdown that he grabbed. That was a really nice hookup with Drake May. This kid's work ethic and his skill set are finally coming together, maybe to be the receiver he was always meant to be. So there's a guy that can really make some noise as well. And as much as we've nailed him for a lot going around here, and as much as we may have, I don't want to say put his back against the wall, but as much as we may have criticized him recently, Jalen Polk, when he's healthy, is capable of making plays. The question is how much more is he going to be valuable than some of the guys on this team? Patriots have a lot of questions to answer when it comes to this wide receiver core, so I'm really looking forward to seeing these guys continue to emerge. And now that the pads are on, you're really going to see a lot of these guys come together, because now they're getting the blocking they need to get open and to make the plays that they need to downfield.
Man, there's a lot to unpack about what you just said, so I just will wrap up a few comments and then go to Steve. But Javon Baker's kind of the forgotten man in the receiver room, and we had an extensive conversation about the depth of the receiver position, and there's a lot of questions to answer. So we have to go. We can dive back into that, and But he definitely has a spot to earn. And people forget, like, Kayshon Boutte. I want to say he's either a 5th or a 6th round pick. I always forget. But he was going to be a 1st round pick going into his final year of college. And his chemistry with Drake May, I feel like, should not be diminished. And he's shown production on the field. And so that will be kind of interesting as well. To your point again about the blocking, it seems like they're doing some things. Yeah, you see things like on Twitter today and Steve and I talked about this on our pre-show talk, as we typically do, that it's hard for offensive and defensive linemen to really stand out at training camp, because there's a lot of one-on-ones, and it's easy to have a one-on-one competition and have a clear winner or clear loser. But that's not necessarily how it works when you're actually within the gridiron and having 5 guys that work together, and on the offensive line, or 4 guys on the defensive line that want to go ahead and dominate the other side of the field. But that's definitely interesting. Steve, what are your thoughts on this whole conversation?
Yeah, and in fact, I've seen multiple reports from guys that we trust, and they're all saying the same thing. Will Campbell was holding his own today out there on the field. especially in the running game. And that's a really good sign because
he's a bulldozer, man.
Yeah. And, I think it was Pat McAfee that said, the guys, when you talk about short arms, no, it wasn't McAfee, it was somebody else. Now I'm losing track of who it was, but I wanted to correctly, attribute it to him. But he said his short arms aren't an issue once he gets his hands inside of,
right?
Yes, because he has that bull strength to push people around, and that was and as the days progress, the defensive linemen they're going to recognize that, and they're going to try to counter that. But at least the first day in pads, he's off to a really good start. And the Patriots defense still got quite a few sacks, but none of them in 11-on-11 work were attributed to Will Campbell. So that's a really good sign.
Yeah, the arm length when you're talking about tackles, so like defensive ends, they always like Mel Kiper, who is kind of the godfather of the draft in some terms, I guess. Uh, he always talks about arm length at certain positions. And if you're talking about defensive ends, the nice thing about defensive ends is that they can, if you have really good, like long arms, you can really go ahead and kind of, use that as a tool to get around the tackle and kind of turn that corner. Von Miller coming out of Texas A&M, whenever that was a decade ago, he really was able to get underneath the guy and turn that corner. And he's obviously had a huge career, Hall of Fame career. And people were worried about Will Campbell because it's like, okay, maybe he can't extend his arm this way. But to what Steve just said, Mike, if you're an offensive lineman and you get your pads, because you can't put your hands outside the shoulder pads because that's when holding calls happen. But if you are a lineman and if you want to be a technician about it, and what Dante I was at a seminar that Scarnecchia was putting on again back in probably again like 10 years ago. It was always about putting it on the chest plate.
Right.
So like it didn't affect like someone like David Andrews. I wouldn't say is like an overly big dude, but he was so good at his job because he always had his arms in the right spot. And I think that Campbell has that same ability. I think that he will have his issues with people with longer arms on the defensive edges, and that will be an issue, and there will be a learning curve because even though he had all those starts at in the SEC with 66 or whatever it was, like yeah, he'll have that issue, but like it's okay as long as he can go ahead and get his arms on you. And to Steve's point, once he gets his arms on you, you're gonna have a tough road to hoe, from that point.
Right, and it's all about quick feet, right?
Yep.
He's athletic enough, and he has quick enough feet to be able to do that, to get inside of a guy. And once he gets inside of that other opponent's shoulder pads, he has that strength.
That's where it shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at when they had Shaq Mason, and when he was coming out, and Scarnecchia worked him out like a couple weeks before the draft. They had Shaq Mason just constantly pulling. They use that literally all the time, and that's something that it's hard. It's a very technical position. It's just hard to see if you don't know the details or don't know the context behind it. So, Mike, to you, with Will Campbell, had some wins, had some losses. It's practice. It is what it is. But were you overly impressed with his athletic ability? To go with Steve's term, you talk about the feet and his movement. I mean, you want those guys in his position to be dancing bears. Because you want them to be able to move, because if they can move, it is all about the slide, and that slide is important. It's what made Look at someone like Sebastian Vollmer or Nate Solder, both really tall guys. And sometimes people look at height and they're like with offensive tackles, and you're talking about them, being too big and not having the leverage. But sometimes those guys are so athletic that they can move side to side, and that actually makes it really difficult on defenders. So, if you saw anything from Will Campbell, anything additionally that you want to add, did you see that his athletic ability was shining through today?
Absolutely, without any question. Early on, obviously, the one-on-one matchups are going to favor the defender. They usually do, and they favored the defender in this case. And I think, first of all, if Keon White, who is a 3-year veteran, is losing his one-on-one battle to Will Campbell in the early stages of training camp, where the Pats just came on, that says a lot more about Keon White than it's going to say about Will Campbell. And Keon did his
Absolutely.
job. He looked great. He looked strong. He looked like he was formidable and is going to come in with a chip on his shoulder and some attitude and bring some aggression to that pass rush. So you were glad to see it. I know there were fans that were a little squeamish when they saw that and said, okay, this is what we were afraid of. But I think he quelled a lot of that when you saw the Patriots settle into some drills, and all of a sudden, Will Campbell starts to show what he can do. He holds his own against Keon White in pass protection during those types of drills. A couple of times I saw him move Wilton Williams over to the left side on runs to that side. And really, I think what it did was it showed that this guy can move defenders around. When he does get the leverage and he does get the position he needs to, he can hold up there against anybody. And he
Mhm.
looked pretty good in tandem with Jared Wilson making some combo blocks in there as well. So I really like what I saw from Will. I'm seeing a tenacity, I'm seeing a toughness and a desire to never back down. And once you see that in an offensive lineman, the rest of those sort of intangibles, the rest of those skills that can be refined will end up being refined. Like you said, there are going to be times where he does run into a defender that just gets the better of him because of their length and maybe his lack thereof. But if he's holding his own for the most part, and we saw what the types of seedlings of the type of player he can be today, yeah, I think the Patriots got themselves their left tackle for a number of years to come.
And he brings, and we've said this at nauseum, but just to say it again, Will Campbell brings everything that Mike Vrabel wants to bring to this team and what he wants to bring to this program. I mean, he brings a toughness, a tenacity, a violence. He does all that. And I want to bring something. I want to bring a player up who you just mentioned here. And again, thank you for everyone listening to Patriots No Huddle, brought to you by PatsFans.com. But Jared Wilson, I'm excited about. It seems like it's been basically Mike, um, Will Campbell, left tackle, left
Mm-hmm.
guard, Cole Strange, center, Garrett Bradbury, right guard, Micah Wenyu, right tackle, Morgan Moses. Well, Jared Wilson has been working in at center and guard,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he has the ability to play both. And I'm not sure if he'll start in the first year, and that's a different conversation, I suppose. But I think that his ability to play both positions gives them really good flexibility. And it seems like Jared Wilson has had himself a decent little first few days here as camp's been underway.
Oh yeah, Jared Wilson looked great out there, and he has really throughout the entirety of training camp thus far. A lot of snaps at left guard, many more than I thought he was going to get there, and he's looked impressive at that position. You look at him at center; that's his natural position. He obviously looks very good there. Minor concerns, and I say minor right now, folks, because we're still doing very minor evaluations of the offensive line. I don't think you can really make a definitive yes or no. Oh, this is definitely not him, or he's out for this. I think it's way too early for that. But something to keep an eye on is there have been now a couple of times where the snap's been fumbled between he and Drake May. These guys need to get on the same page, make sure that they're synced up when that snap is coming, so that way there aren't problems like that develop into the season when these two guys are aligned. If Jared is under center or wherever he is snapping the ball to May, you want to make sure these guys are in sync. And again, Jared is a rookie. These moments are going to happen. So that's why you rehearse. That's what training camp is. It's a dress
It
rehearsal.
is
You go in there,
practice.
you try to get in there. You're designed and you're expected to make mistakes so that way you can learn from them. So if they're making the mistakes here, folks, it's only that much better to know that they probably won't do these types of mistakes when the season begins. Not in a Mike Vrabel regime. He's not going to handle that. He's not going to sit, quietly while that goes on. He's going to make sure that if you're messing up, you know what you did wrong and you're going to correct it. So with Wilson, yeah, I think they have themselves a definite swing weapon, someone that could come in and give them a spot start. Who knows? By the end of the year, he may be entrenched in a starting position, whether it be at center for Garrett Bradbury or whether it be at left guard for Cole Strange. Jared Wilson is a very big part of this team's future plans for the offensive line, and they're showing it early.
And he brings like we're talking about him as a depth piece right now and his versatility to play multiple positions, but I can sit here and say right now that I do think Jared Wilson will be a starting offensive lineman for the Patriots. If it's not at some point this year, I don't think that next year's out of the question. I think his time is coming. It's just going to be about you know what it is. And Steve, over the years we've talked about offensive linemen and the versatility because n- when you are kind of filling out your depth chart, you can only keep so many guys. And usually the bottom guys on the running back or the receiver depth chart, it's always about, well, what can they bring on special teams, because you're going to need that. Same thing with defensive back. Okay, but then but then with linemen, you got to think about what's their versatility. What can they do? How many, and if they're going to keep 8 or if they're going to keep 9, which is usually relatively the number, what can you do for me tomorrow? Maybe not what are you doing for me today, basically. So Wilson seems like he fits the bill, Steve, of what they've been looking for. I don't care if it's Belichick or Mayo or Vrabel.
Yeah, and the bottom line is he can play, left guard. He can play center. They even used him a couple of snaps at right guard the other day. Let me shut this door. And anyway, I think he has more than a puncher's chance at starting at left guard this year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes some starts at left guard. Right now it seems like they're pretty pleased with Garrett Bradbury, but they're working Wilson in. So I think he might start.
And I'd say the same thing, Steve. I'd say the same thing about Cole Strange too. Like, yeah, I understand Cole Strange has gotten a lot of flack, but he can start at multiple positions too. So
Yep.
so even if Vrabel and Wolf decided to start Jared Wilson at left guard, I wouldn't say, well, that means that Cole Strange doesn't have a job. I would say, no, it's the exact same thing. He could play center, he could play guard too. So that I just think that you have to look at, when you're looking at depth as we go through training camp, what can you do? What are the different jobs these guys can do to see how you're going to go ahead and figure it out.
Yep. And the old mantra from the Belichick days, right? Versatility. Thy name is Belichick,
Yeah.
you
And
I
there's
mean,
availability and
versatility. I mean, if the more that you can do, right, the better shot you have at being on the football team. And they have a couple of guys, Wilson, Strange, they can play multiple positions, and that makes them valuable.
Mike, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, even though I do love to do that. Uh, but did you see anything out of Robert Spillane today? Because I heard he had a couple of good PBUs, and I do think he's going to be involved a lot. And I thought that his comment the other day, talking about, well, Vrabel and him, Robert himself said that he wanted to be able to, uh, know what everyone's job is, going on around him, because he knew that he would be able to go ahead and diagnose things faster on defense. Again, defense is reactionary, right? And I know what Vrabel thinks about him already. And and as we talked about in the last show, as Marcus Jones deemed him the commander, I do think he's going to be a pretty big cog in the defense, and I think he's tailor made for Vrabel's defense and Tyrell Williams' defense, because their defense is going to be a downhill style. So if you have a defensive line with all the guys that we've talked about being aggressive, penetrating, and linebackers kind of filling in some of those gaps instead of like, or not instead, I guess, with your defenders trying to go ahead and cover their guys and then just making plays on the ball if the front seven can get after it. What have you seen from Robert Spillane? Because I do think that he is going to be a name that a lot of people are talking about here. More and more as the pads are coming on, this is really what his level's at.
Very well said. Robert Spillane, to me, has been the guy that, to me, screams on-field awareness when you're talking about his on-the-field work, and leadership when it comes to the sidelines, when it comes to the locker room. On the field, this guy is always in and around the ball, or at least knows everything that's going on the field around him. They're so rare. And those types of players are players that you want to keep on your roster at any cost. Having spoken to a few of my brethren that cover the Las Vegas Raiders out in Sin City last week, mentioned that Spillane was one of the guys that was on that roster that they did not want to see depart because of everything he brings to the table. On the field, you're absolutely right. This guy is definitely, he's in on pass breakups. He'll be in on a tackle. He'll make the play on the ball if he needs to. He moves very well from sideline to sideline, and he's going to be an invaluable part of what the Patriots do defensively this year, especially with that more aggressive push that they're going to put toward that defense and kind of migrate away from what's been essentially a two-gapping scheme here under Bill Belichick and Gerard Mayo for a number of years. So on the field, they've got a great ball player that's really going to help them do a lot. But the leadership and the knowledge that this guy has of Mike Vrabel's playbook, Tyrell Williams' playbook, the way these guys want to go ahead and defend each and everything that goes on the field from an offensive standpoint is something you can't put a price tag on. You can't quantify that. It's on the field, it's there, and it's going to make its presence felt each and every time he takes the field. Because of Robert Spillane, I'll go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say there are going to be few, if any, opportunities where you can pick this Patriots team apart and say they had no clue what they were doing on this play. No one was in the right position. This was a completely broken mess. We said that quite often over the course of the last couple of years. Last year, definitely, and even in the last couple of years under Bill Belichick. This year, you're not going to see that. Vrabel was a big reason why, but you've got to give Robert Spillane a lot of credit for that. He is not going to allow that on his football field. And I think the way players are responding to him already, they're already viewing him with that unofficial leader type vibe that you get from him each and every time he puts on a helmet.
Yeah, Robert Spillane, I have a man crush on, and it's because I can tell that he's exactly the vibe that Vrabel wants to bring to the table. I would say, I'm not Field Yates. I'm not Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Connor Rogers, Trevor Sikkema. I'm not Evan Lazar. I can't break down the tape that they do, but I will say that if you're a fan listening to the show and you're looking at like college football and you are wondering like what player is going to be highly drafted or whatever, it's always a good sign if you're watching a game and you hear a defensive player's name constantly mentioned by the commentators because they're around the ball.
Right.
Vice versa, or not vice versa. On the flip side of that coin, you never really want to hear an offensive lineman's mentioned because it's usually a mistake versus like a positive play. There's very few times where you want to have that, and I feel like Spillane is going to bring just an absolute edge and a hard nose. And Steve, we've talked about this offense a lot because there's a lot of questions surrounding the offense. It's Drake May going to year 2. It's what does McDaniels bring to the table? How does the offensive line look? Defensively, there are questions, but I think there's more confidence. I would say quiet confidence in Patriots fans, Steve, with the defense because they feel
Absolutely.
like they can see where it's gonna go. Whether it gets how fast it gets there is the question, and that's what we'll discuss on the show over time. But defensively, like Robert Spillane, I mean, he's the kind of guy who's going to bring the attitude, and he's going to go ahead and play that role in the middle of the field up there early. And the defensive line, if they're going to create chaos, he's going to be there to kind of quote unquote clean up the mess. And then you're just hoping the defensive backs, if he's not able to get there, maybe the defensive backs are able to go ahead and make a couple of plays to have something happen positively on the other side.
Well, I think, Spillane, as we've said numerous times, I've written numerous times, he is a perfect fit for what Mike Vrabel wants to do defensively. You have, Milton Williams, Christian Barmore. These guys aren't going to be asked to two gap, read and react. They're going to be trying to penetrate and blow plays up in the backfield. And if they are able to do that, just keep your eye on the camera because Spillane is going to be around the football and, on every snap because that's the kind of player he is. And, the Raiders weren't a great team last year, but, I thought he was fantastic for them. And that's why I was so excited.
Yeah,
right?
I know you were pumped.
When they signed him. So, I think he's going to be a great fit. And I think their linebacking unit as a whole is going to be a great.
Jack Gibbons said today that it was the smartest linebacker room he's ever been in, and
Yeah.
I thought that was
quite a statement.
Yeah, I thought that was strong. And it brought excitement because I think that there's a lot of things, and like you said, you just said the phrase two gapping, and so these guys aren't like they didn't bring Harold Landry in here to two gap. Like they brought him in to get after it, and they're not spending whatever it is, 90. Yeah, Caleb Von Chase on Brian Swinson, like the LSU rookie, like they're not bringing these guys into two gap. They're getting after there to go hunt. So it's like letting the dog off the leash during hunting season. They're going to sprint. So it's what it is. Mike, I want to ask you a question that I know is near and dear to Steve's heart. I know him and I talked about it this afternoon. Anthony Jennings, really good player, great player in Belichick's defense. How does he fit in your mind in Vrabel's defense? Because it's hard to. We talk about all these guys, and I think he's a really good football player. But just because you're a really good football player doesn't mean that you're a good fit for the system and what these guys are trying to instill. Not that there's necessarily this isn't certain college classes where it's pass or fail or yes or no, but it's like one of those things where it's like, how do I see him fitting in this system? I think he'll latch on and be a good player. But do you see him fitting at all in this system? Because I feel like he's kind of a forgotten man. And that was Steve's boy for a long time, just so you know, way before you were on here. this is okay. So and he called it way before I saw it, and I give him credit for that all day long. But like I'm trying to picture if he can fit in this defense. Do you see it, or do you think that he might be somebody that maybe is on the outside looking in, and maybe he just latches on somewhere else because of the scheme?
Well, I think a lot of that is going to have to depend on how the players around him perform and whether or not Anthony feels squeezed out or whether the Patriots feel like his skill set can be replicated by either one or two players that they're better off adding to that roster. Look, in terms of athleticism, in terms of what Anthony brings to the table, we've seen the tape on him the last couple of years. He's very good against the run. He's someone that can get aggressive and make things happen in the pass rush. He's a lateral player in terms of being able to move from side to side with great ease. And I think that's where right now, New England is trying to focus its efforts with trying to give him an opportunity to win a spot here. I think there is a way that he can make this team, and I think it's through his solid play. I think it's through his knowledge and his veteran leadership that's going to allow him to be able to carve out a niche here. The last couple of roster projections that I've thought of or that I've given for Sports Illustrated, I've had Anthony making those each time. And I don't think that's necessarily a stretch of the imagination. There is a great deal of value in someone that's been here, that's been to the puppet show and seen the strains. So if you take that at face value, yeah, I think Anthony has the ability to make this roster, and I think he will. But if Mike Vrabel sees an ability to replicate what he brings to you in one or two players that he's brought in, or players that step up and play to the maximum of their ability, I don't think there are any sacred cows on this team, save for Drake May and Christian Gonzalez, and maybe a handful of others that are untouchable. I don't put Anthony in that untouchable list simply because I think there's too many, solid athletes at the position that he would have to consider. But that being said, I still do believe he'll carve out a niche on this team because of his ability to contribute both in run and in pass defense.
Yeah, I think that I think that was very well said. I think that with the receiver position, you see a lot of guys who are all NFL players, but what's the role? What's the role? What's the, how does the depth chart look? How does it fit into the new offense? I think with the defensive linemen, I think it's a little bit more shallow, or whatever. And then you get to the edge players, and it's really about what do the coaches envision like their roles being.
Mhm.
And again, I want to say again that I think Anthony Jennings is an NFL player. He's provided a lot for the team on the defense in the past. I just wonder how the fit is.
Mm,
Sometimes it's a square peg in a round hole. You know
right.
what I mean? And I think that's something you got to keep in mind.
Fair.
Steve, I want to switch over to something else here, and I'll ask one more question, and I'll see what you guys, if there's anything that you guys want to bring up too. But um, it seems like the third safety is really up for grabs as well, because I think that depending on if they want to go heavy on the backside, adding heavy meaning like if they run like a nickel or dime package, a quarter package with more defensive backs on the field, besides from Peppers or Duggar, is Woodson ready for the role? And all the other guys they have going in. So, what are your thoughts on the safety position, Steve? Because I find that fascinating too, and I feel like that kind of goes under the radar because a lot of the things that we covered in the last 15 minutes that we've been recording the show, it's maybe not the sexiest position, but it does play a big role in the defense, and there are a lot of decent names in there too with some depth that have different abilities that they can bring to the table. So, what are your thoughts on the third safety, quote unquote, of who they would bring in or who they would hold on to the roster?
Well, I think they're loaded at safety. I think you can make the argument that's the deepest position on the
On the
football
on the
team,
on the
right?
team. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And when it comes to the third safety, I know this sounds kind of trite, but I think it's going to depend on the opponent from week to week. You know, 1 week, you might want the rookie in there. 1 week, you might want, a bigger, more heavier hitter like a Del Pettis in there. I think it's gonna fluctuate a little bit, but I'm not worried about the safety position at all. I mean, obviously they'll have to stay healthy, but right now the two big guys, Duggar and Jabril Peppers. I mean, um, they both look good so far. In fact, Duggar seems intent on proving that last year was a fluke because of injury, and right now even the rookie, I mean, they brought this guy in. A lot of people thought they reached for him in the fourth round. I think a
I
lot
was
of
one
people
of them.
yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to change their mind once the season starts. So we'll
Yeah.
have to see. But again, to me, I think that third safety role will depend a lot on who they're playing and what kind of offense they're facing.
And I totally agree with that, and I would say that I think Craig Woodson's going to play a bigger role than maybe some people think, and that's because he brings a different skill set to the table than I think a lot of the other guys bring. A lot of, like, you talk about, Del Pettis or Peppers or Duggar, like those guys like to bring the lumber. I know what they're going to try to do, and I said this before on previous shows, but for people who are listening now or listening later, if you, and we appreciate it, uh, he's like, I know Peppers is going to want to knock somebody's block off, and I know that's right up Vrabel's alley. So like that's all well and good. But it is kind of curious because they don't have. Woodson is the closest thing to what they would have to, like, let's call it a Devin McCourty type. Not comparing the player, just comparing the athletic ability and what they can do on the field and on the back end. So that's kind of interesting. Mike, when it comes to the safety position, I don't know if there's anything from that you want to add. Obviously, you have carte blanche to do that, but there is a finite number of defensive backs, including cornerbacks, when you're talking about depth chart and everything, and what they want to bring. Who have you seen anything from at practice, even something small or minor, that you think one way or the other?
Well, Woodson's been the guy that I've been keeping my eye on a lot for a lot of reasons. One, because I've been a fan of his since the Patriots drafted him. I know a lot of Pats fans believe they did reach, to bring him in, and that it was a pick that they were not happy with because they felt that the Pats could have maximized their value elsewhere. But Craig Woodson is someone that absolutely, much like we just talked about with Robert Spillane, is very aware of what's happening around him at all times. And he has that ability as a very young player to be able to do that. He's always in and around the ball. He's always looking to make the play. That aggressive style is going to lend itself very nicely into that aggressive defensive front. So to me, it's a hand in glove fit. And I think both he and Jabril Peppers in that backfield can really cause some havoc for opposing offenses that are trying to move the ball, especially deep into that part of the field. Del Pettis is someone that I keep coming back to and saying that maybe I didn't give him a fair enough shake the first time around when I did a couple of early roster projections and left him on the cutting room floor. Again, this is a kid that plays with a lot of tenacity, a lot of toughness. I find myself having a very difficult time leaving him off the rosters that I'm
But he
working
did
on
make a
right now.
couple of splash
He did
plays,
make a
Mike.
couple. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Pettis is someone that can continue to make those. He's just started to scratch the surface of what he can become in this league. So if in fact the Patriots decide that they're getting what they need out of the others and maybe Dell is the odd man out, he's going to make another team extremely happy. I firmly believe the Patriots should do everything they can to keep him in the fold because I don't think he'll slip past the waivers. There is a lot of light on him for what he did last year, and for good reason, because he is a guy that can make a difference in that defensive backfield. And again, I always watch Kyle Duggar very closely because he's the big name in that secondary. He's the big name in that safety room. Can he continue to maintain the type of play style that he's put out for the last few years and make himself an indelible part of this team, at least for this year? Yeah, I think he's done enough right now to show that, but he's going to have to keep it consistent and keep it continuing all throughout training camp and into the preseason because the Patriots may look at it and say, hey, you know what? We have an opportunity maybe to move Kyle. It might be to our benefit to do that if we can and get something decent in return, and we're able to replicate what he plays and the type of game that he plays. So a lot of things to like out there with the safeties. Jalen Hawkins is kind of the
Yeah,
forgotten
he's another
man,
one
I think,
who's
in that
flashed
field,
too.
but he's another one that really I think is capable of making pretty big plays. And I know they've moved him over to linebacker, but do not sleep on Marte Mapu getting some spots in the safety position. For a number of years, we've seen guys go back and forth and play hybrid defensive back or hybrid linebacker. Marte's got the skill set to do it. So a lot of things factor into that safety room right now. A very intriguing one to watch over the course of the next couple of days as padded practices become the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Evan Lazar was here, I, I know he doesn't know that I said this at the time, but I heard him on his live reaction, and I don't want to speak for him, Okay, so Evan, if you hear this, I'm not trying to speak for you, but I know that when they drafted Marte Mapu, and I had the first reaction, the same reaction as well, which was Marte Mapu should have been probably a linebacker, but it was hard. And now he looks like a man without a home a little bit, and it looks like it's like, is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? And I'm kind of curious. Like, he does fit like the Vrabel type of linebacker. Um, that he would want, athletic and able to have a ton of lateral agility, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. So I think he's interesting too, and Mike, to your point, shout out to Miguel. I'll use the term cost benefit analysis. I think the team has to decide, what he's being paid by, I would say, semi-previous regime versus what he brings on the field. I think he's safe for this year, but I think this year's a big year for him because I think last year there were a lot of blown plays that he had, and I would put Ramondre Stevenson in that same boat. I think they're both good players, but I think they both had really questionable games last year at times, and they're both being paid a lot of amounts of money. So how are they going to go ahead and do that? So, we'll see. We'll see how that all works. I don't want to go too long, guys, but I know I've been a chatty Cathy and throwing around questions to you guys. So, Steve, I'll go to you. Is there anything that you want to bring up that we haven't already discussed?
Well, I think another young guy that really showed up today, and we've been talking about him since the draft, is Travion Henderson. And I think he showed in practice today that if teams isolate him with a linebacker in the passing game, they're going to have issues. And actually, he dusted Marte Mapu today in practice, and I don't think that's a knock on Mapu. I think it shows what Henderson can bring to the field in the passing game. And for one, I was really excited to see that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Mike, anything that you want to bring up that we haven't discussed, and then I'll go to final thoughts and I'll let you take us out.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily things that we haven't discussed, but just to reiterate and maybe expand a little bit on the run defense. Winning your battles along the line of scrimmage is something that you need to establish very early if you're going to hope to be a solid run defense. And the Patriots, first day when pads, Mike Vrabel had them working on this. The Pats run defense stuffed 8 of 27 runs and 11 on 11s. Offensive line has shown that they can hold up, that they can provide that type of barrier, but the defensive line continues to be a solid, unit when it comes to defending the run. That's an area where the Patriots had some difficulty last season. It's nice to see them kind of get back into the swing of things and make sure that what they're going to be able to do is, prevent those running games from getting on track. Because once that happens, Patriots defense looked like it wore out very quickly last year. I do not think you're going to see that this year. And I want to give a little shout out to Caleb Anchieson, who would have been credited by my count with 2 sacks today. And I think that he's showing an ability to get into the backfields of the offense and make life difficult for opposing quarterbacks. This kid is, I think, maybe more of a underrated signings of the offseason, but do not sleep on this signing. I think he can be a very good contributor for the Patriots this year, especially in that reworked front seven.
Absolutely, great point, Steve. Any final thoughts for you, bud?
Yeah, real quick, I'm so pleased so far with what we've seen from the guys that they brought in this year. I mean, Harold Landry, you just talked about Chason, Robert Spillane, Travion Henderson, Stephon Diggs. The list goes on and on. But I'm really excited to see how Drake May is starting to progress in year 2. We started off the show with that, play that he made on Saturday, where he was flushed out of the pocket. He remained a passer, kept his eyes down the field, rolled out to his right, and then threw an absolute dime to Mario Douglas. And I thought that was an incredible play. And those are the type of things that you can build on.
Absolutely. I don't really have any final thoughts other than the fact that I am just excited. The pads are on, guys are back on the field. I am gonna continue to thank the Lord and Savior that Christian Gonzalez is okay, because I'm gonna I'm really nervous about that one, but I know that guys are gonna get hurt, banged up. That's just collateral damage of just how football season goes. But I'm excited that we're in here, guys. And I mean, it's been a lot of talk. It seems like we've been studying recipes of baking, and now it's time to cook. So I'm excited about that. But at the end of the day, there's enough foreplay, and now it's time to get down to the dirty work. So, Mike, any final thoughts for you, bud? And then you can take us out.
No, I think just what better final thought could we possibly have than to thank all of our adoring public out there that continue to make Patriots No Huddle a daily part and a weekly part of your New England Patriots coverage. Thank you for all the attention that you've been showing to us the last couple of weeks. It's certainly not gone unnoticed. We definitely appreciate it. And the good news is that you ain't seen nothing yet. We're just getting started here on Patriots No Huddle. So continue to like, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the Pats Fans channel on YouTube so you don't miss a single second of the action when Patriots No Huddle is posted. Folks, the pads are on, and we're going to continue to bring you all the action from Foxborough, so keep it right here. But in the meantime, on behalf of my Patriots paisan, Steve Balistrieri, my good friend and colleague, Derek Havens, who I always tip the cap to, and most importantly, to all of you out there in Patriots Nation that continue to support Patriots No Huddle, I'm Mike Debate, reminding all of you to stay safe, to stay well, to be the change you wish to see in the world. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you back here again